Hello and welcome to the latest Manufacturing Management live panel event. My name is Chris Beck, I'm the editor of Manufacturing Management and I'm delighted to welcome you along. Our panel today is sponsored by Safety Culture. Safety Culture is the operational heartbeat of working teams around the world. Its mobile-first operations platform leverages the power of human observation to identify issues and opportunities for businesses to improve every day. And we're going to be talking about how to make manufacturing more agile and adaptive using technology. And especially at the moment, the ability to adapt fast gives manufacturers a competitive edge. The trouble is many organizations continue to battle traditional and old-fashioned operational models that leave management and employees stuck in purgatory, unable to drive meaningful change, or simply losing productivity and time through inefficient or lengthy processes that really need updating. As we come out of the pandemic and start to look at the kind of future ahead of us, quite often that will call for quite a radical change in approach, and the answer quite often lies in technology. And over the next 45 minutes or so, we're going to be looking at some of the operational challenges that stand in the way of manufacturers and how technology can or should help manufacturers move towards more agile, data-driven models of working. And to help me explore all that, I'm joined by a group of leading experts from across the industry. So I'd like to welcome Damon Williams, Sales Team Lead for Safety Culture, our sponsors today. Steve Cartwright, Chief Engineer at the MTC, Manufacturing Technology Centre in Coventry. Kevin Smith, Industrial Digital Technology Advisor for the Made Smarter programme. And last but not least, Laurie Anthony, Head of Industry, Technology and Innovation at Policy Connect. Nice to see you all today. Thank you for joining us. Before we get underway properly with the discussion, can I get you all to introduce yourselves very briefly? Damon, we'll start with you.
Cool. Yeah. Hi everyone. I'm Damon. So yeah, as I say, work at Safety Culture, making sure we're the tool that can digitize your operations. I've been working at Safety Culture for over 4.5 years now. I'm the longest standing member in the kind of sales and success team here. Our tool works in a number of industries, but I've been able to specialize within those 4 years into manufacturing and worked with a lot of our over 900 customers within the manufacturing space that use iAudit to digitize their work process. Thanks for the introduction.
Thanks, Damon. Steve, I'll come to you next.
Hi. Hello, everybody. As I've just been introduced, Steve Cartwright. I'm from the MTC, Manufacturing Technology Centre, based in Coventry. Unfortunately, I've only been here for about 6 months, but I do come from a background of 37 years in automotive, in controls and automation. But I've joined the MTC as a chief engineer, centering around technology and product development.
Lovely, thanks, Steve. Kevin, tell us about Made Smarter.
Hi, Chris. Yes, so my name's Kevin Smith and I'm the lead technology advisor on the Made Smarter programme. So we're a government programme to unite established and emerging UK technology innovators with the manufacturing community. There's two sides to the programme. There's an innovation side where we offer collaborative R&D funding, technology accelerators, test beds, living labs, etc. I work on the adoption side of the programme. So to put it clearly, everyone's heard about how great these technologies are and how they can transform businesses, but businesses don't really know what to do about them. So that's where we come in and we offer really straightforward, impartial advice to manufacturing SMEs. And then more than that, we offer grant funding as well to de-risk that investment in technology. So really help transform UK manufacturing.
Great, thanks, Kevin. And finally, Florian.
Yep. Hi, my name's Laurie Anthony. I'm the head of Industry Technology Innovation at Policy Connect. Policy Connect is a cross-party think tank. So we work with industry, academia, civic society, and government and policymakers to try to understand kind of what will the future of manufacturing look like, what are some of the interventions we'll need from government, supporting programs like Kevin's and Made Smarter, and trying to draw that consensus across government, policymakers, and parliamentarians. My background is as a manufacturing engineer, so I worked in pharmaceutical manufacturing prior to joining here.
Brilliant, thanks. Like I say, a really good high-level panel today. So hopefully we're about to have a really interesting discussion. And like I said, today we're going to be talking about technology and some of the advantages that it can bring from a kind of process point of view. And I'd like to kind of kick off, I suppose, with a kind of a state of the market overview, I suppose, a discussion around that. There's a lot said about how the UK lags behind when it comes to automation and kind of robotics adoption. But I guess the question I have really is what's the problem with that? If we're world-class manufacturers doing things without automation and robotics, why do we need to be considering technology at all? Damon, I'll come to you first, but please, everybody else, have your say.
Yeah, no, it's a good point, and I think I might put it to someone else who might know it slightly better than I do on there. But in terms of that one, I guess we've always known as UK in terms of the quality that we're delivering, in terms of that round in there. And if everyone's going robotics and making it far more easier, are we going to ever be able to catch up or compete in the way that China is, or do we differentiate ourselves actually to be more unique, hand-driven, better quality, to put it into to compete in that market in a slightly different way is potentially a better way I would go. But love to hear kind of what the other panels think about that statement there as well.
Absolutely, yeah. Steve, Kevin, either of you, well placed.
Yeah, I mean, from the perspective of the MTC and an involvement in the industry, obviously a growth in productivity, and obviously helping to drive the UK manufacturing forward has got to be at the centre of why automation adoption by SMEs and major companies as we come out of the pandemic has got to be key to productivity.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that productivity is something we're going to touch on quite a bit, I'd imagine, over the next 45 minutes or so. But Kevin, anything to add?
Yeah, I think talking, I mean, the statement technology, does UK manufacturing need technology? I mean, yes, it does. There's lots more challenges that technology is addressing rather than just automation and robotics. But just talking about that, I think one of the things we're recognising recently is a real lack of labour and labour shortages. And I think in terms of automation and robotics, that's where that technology can really help at the moment.
Yeah, Florian, I saw you nodding away there when Kevin mentioned labour shortages and skills. Obviously you've got something to say on that.
Yeah, I'm going to go around the houses a little bit, so bear with me. But I think COVID-19 has shown us that we really do need to have a really strong manufacturing sector that's able to meet product demand and customer demand in this sort of continuous world of disruption that we've got at the moment. But what it's also shown us is that we can't keep manufacturing the way that we always have. We need to become more sustainable, more resource efficient, more circular in our supply chains, in order to continue meeting that demand, but also in order to conserve our planet and our climate and the communities that we're working within. And so the way we see it at the All Party Manufacturing Group is that automation and technology is kind of the new Lean and Six Sigma, and that's kind of where we're going next in terms of how do we upskill our workforce and how do we upskill our processes so that we can do them more sustainably and we can do them faster. So yeah, and completely agree with Kevin on the skills piece. And I think like the new generation of engineers that are kind of entering the workforce care about sustainability, care about net zero, and want to be able to use technology and kind of the new techniques that are out there in order to achieve these sort of long-term goals that businesses have set themselves. And so another way to attract that sort of new wave of engineers is by getting them to use all the cool tech that they learn about.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Sorry, Kevin.
To come back on that, a really important point Florian's making there. I think it's easy to think about developing technology make people less important, but actually the reverse is true, because it's people, not technology, that meet the challenges. And technology allows for the opportunities, but I suppose it's how we choose to use those technologies that determines the success. So I think it's an important point.
It's about what we often find is using that technology to move people from doing all of the admin or duplication of trying to manage multiple things. So they're actually not just sat there and putting data into a computer, which is quite often the case. It's more around actually just getting instant access to that data so they can drive those own data decisions that they want to do and be that slightly more strategic and improve the problems that they're finding as people. And plus that's more challenging, more rewarding for those individuals to do that as well. So,
and it adds an element of safety, doesn't it? So then you're taking people out of potentially dangerous situations when they're doing kind of their maintenance and all of that sort of upkeep. And actually you can start to use automation and new technologies to do that work for people. So then you're really starting to explore the sort of realm of how can I make this process more streamlined, but also how can I use my people to best effect? And actually, some of the predictive maintenance work that you do, you can actually automate it quite easily and quite quickly.
Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. Steve, is there anything you'd? Sorry, Kevin.
Yeah, I think fundamentally as well, the technology is an enabler. I think some businesses fundamentally have to change the way they do their business as well to take advantage of the technology. It's not just a case of putting technology and think that's going to fix everything. We do have to literally transpose the way we do our business to take advantage of that technology as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a very good point. Kevin, you were going to say something there.
Yeah, no, technology is not magic, is it? People tend to think of it as like it's a black box you can switch on and everything's fixed, but it's not that. That's not true at all. It's just on Damon's point before about, that's probably one of the main reasons we have for SME manufacturers contacting us for support is around, the idea that they've got so many manual repetitive tasks that if they can automate those tasks, they can free up the time to focus on all the value adding activity that can grow their business and respond to the challenges and stuff. So I think that's really key, the idea of getting rid of those manual repetitive tasks that often error prone as well.
Yeah, 100%. I think we've worked on it in one particular manufacturer. I think when we've worked on it and worked out what we can do and how much we can give back to them, it's turned out to be just under 3,000 working days a year worth of that workforce back to them is one particular example we worked on in terms of just removing it again. It's very simple process of removing sort of a paper checklist. They just do it on an app instead of taking that paper checklist and then putting it into a computer and typing away and making reports. It just does it for them. That's one of the examples, and it's crazy the amount of time they can save by removing those.
Just to kind of further that, Damon, and actually something that Florian mentioned earlier on was around kind of lean and Six Sigma, and that's that's second nature to a lot of manufacturers, I'm sure, and a lot of people who'll be watching this will be doing lean and kind of understand it inside out. But you just kind of gave a demonstration there of a massive saving that going through a kind of traditional lean or Six Sigma route you would have got to eventually, but technology has kind of enabled that a lot quicker. And Florian's point about technology being the next step from kind of lean thinking. I wonder if enough manufacturers see technology in that way, or see it as a way of putting a big shiny robot or whatever, or some data capture in the middle of the shop floor that they'll deal with at some point. Do they understand the kind of operational benefits, the process improvements that can be derived from technology? I wonder. Who'd like to pick me up on that? Steve?
But there's a roadmap to automation. Really, it's something that we've been working on here at the MTC about how you introduce automation into a company. A lot of companies are fearful of technology. They don't know where the starting point is to introduce that technology, and I think you have to step into that world. And once you're in it, it's not as bad as it actually makes out to be. It's not as frightening. You've just got to be committed to it. And as Damon said, the workforce, it allows the workforce to not shy away from the technology, but it's certainly to diversify their skill sets as well. Yeah. And just because I'm bringing technology in and it frees man hours up, it doesn't necessarily mean that's a bad thing. It means that not only can I be more productive, but I can actually invest in my people. I can retrain them to look after that automation that was doing the manual task. And as Damon says, you can grow your productivity that way as well, using your existing people and diversify the workforce.
Absolutely. And I suppose if you're a manufacturer that's investing in technology and automation, you'll be more attractive to the new generation of people, a bit like Florian again was talking about, who are coming into manufacturing and want to see manufacturing as a technology focused, forward looking, sustainable sector to be working in. So automation can only help, I suppose, the kind of skills crisis that we've briefly touched on already.
Yeah, I guess there's, and this is kind of a question to the wider group, what does meaningful automation then look like? Because I think sometimes you do get people who come in really kind of excited about what they can do with technology, with Python coding, whatever sensors, etc. And sometimes forget the essence of you're doing this because it's part of your continuous improvement framework, right? So how do you automate your processes so you actually get meaningful outcomes at the end?
Yeah, it's kind of like the challenge that Made Smarter is trying to address, or the Made Smarter adoption side of the program is trying to address. And we very much advocate starting, with the challenges. Yes, we're all about technology. We evangelize the technology and stuff, but the most important thing is to listen first and foremost. And I suppose what meaningful automation is meaningful. It's different to different companies. So it's upfront doing that requirements gathering, understanding, what it is you're trying to achieve, and that's probably the most important part of the work we do. Probably similar with you, Steve. I think you at MTC have a similar approach.
Yeah, very much so. I echo that exactly, Kevin. It's looking for the problem that you're trying to fix, not just throwing the technology at it and hoping it's going to fix and make it more productive. How do you make a smart factory out of nothing? You could put one sensor in at the end of the line that automatically counts the parts coming off the production line. All of a sudden, I'm smart because I'm not relying on an operator counting those parts. So it depends what you're actually trying to fix, at what level of technology you want to put in there to help improve a situation.
Yeah, I 100% echo and agree with both you guys. It all is about the outcome that you want to achieve. What do you visually want to see at the end of that? And that dictates what you go back to the start itself. So it's actually, where do you want to be in the future? Will dictate where you start. Where's the biggest impact that's going to be there?
Yeah, I think that's the thing that's sometimes the most difficult, because you put all this you put all this sort of measurement tools in, and then you suddenly have this massive wealth of data about your process. But it can be quite difficult sometimes to drill down into, how do I then use this to make data-driven decisions that are actually thinking about the future state? Because often you can get bogged down in the kind of, what's the current state of my process? Am I hitting the parts per minute? Like, am I hitting the daily KPIs? And it becomes, and I think sometimes you need that data and that technology to start thinking about, well, actually, if I'm sitting at a percentage OE now, what would that look like in 10 months' time if I embed all of these new techniques and processes? But what have you guys experienced with that?
Yeah, it's quite interesting. I was thinking about this recently. We kind of get sort of two categories of companies come to us. There's the ones which sort of have no data, or maybe it's paper based, and need help to start gathering the data. And there's others that are coming to us with, like you say, too much data and not really any idea what to do with it. And I think it comes back to having data on the wrong things. It comes down to at the beginning, making sure you know why you're doing this, and therefore collecting the right data with the right tools.
Yeah, it really becomes an exercise of, I remember having a particular day where I think I spent with one particular one, was that exercise at the start was going, right, what is it what you guys do, and all about the food quality and how we can do that. So, okay, cool. So let's work from there. And what's the important numbers you need to see to make sure you're delivering that? And then what do you need to see to show that you're improving towards that? And then only eventually then could we actually get to the point where we're going, okay, so this is how we're going to set this all up. This is how we're going to put the system in, and that's how that will feed into there to give you exactly what you need.
Yeah, there's always a risk of data for the sake of data, isn't there? Everyone assumes that Industry 4 or technology in general is all about collecting a load of data, but the real problem is, what do you do with it once you've collected it? Are you collecting the right data? And that's a real learning curve for a lot of manufacturers, especially SMEs. And Kevin, I know you work with SMEs. Are you seeing, and I mean, I'm sure all of you work with SMEs, but are you seeing attitudes towards technology and better understanding of the kind of power of technology and the power of data? Are you seeing that beginning to improve? Or traditional manufacturers, I suppose, who 5 or so years ago would have been more than happy, with just a kind of desktop PC in the shop floor, and that's kind of it. Are you seeing them beginning to embrace the idea of technology a bit more?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, awareness of technology is far greater. I work in the Northwest region. We've been running this program now for 3 years. Initially, it was a pilot program. Now it's been rolled out to other regions as well. But in that time, I've certainly seen an increasing awareness about technologies. Yes, by far the most the technology they're most interested in is the whole sort of data systems, data analysis type projects, because companies are realizing they need to understand more about their business, than they do in order to be competitive. The other more advanced technologies, I would say that there's less awareness, and we've still got a mission to inform and educate people about those. But certainly in terms of data and data-driven technologies, I think companies are getting on board with them. And I think there's a shift in seeing that idea of data as a tool just for accountability. I think companies are starting to see it as an asset which they can really drive change in their business with.
Damon, is that something you're also seeing with the companies you work with?
Yeah, it was up to me, sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, sorry,
yeah, 100%. That's what it is all about. It's going beyond there. We often compare it to like children. If you look at what the government says on how you raise your own children, the meat regulations is to make sure they're fed, they're clothed, and they're not being hurt. I mean, there's so much more that you put into effort to make sure you're bringing your children up right, and that's exactly the same in terms of ticking the boxes that you have to do and compliant, but actually completely running your business to be competitive in the market, bringing this product in that you want to, the quality standards that you need to, the brand standards that you need to meet. All of this stuff is so driven to make sure that you can do that with data. So it's, coming back to make sure what you want to be able to achieve in terms of that. If it's improving your brand standards, so it's the quality of what you're producing. So we've got to make sure that on the data, all the data is driven to show you exactly what's being done so you can make those decisions to drive that.
Absolutely. Steve,
that's a good point Damon raises. I mean, the trouble is with data is you can end up with a tsunami of data, and the problem is it's that interpretation. It's putting that data into context. How I'm going to apply it to what I'm actually trying to measure, and what is the outcome of the data. The data is just a data set. It's what you do with that data that is going to make the change. And sometimes you can't see the wood for the trees. There's that much data coming out of it. And, I'd always urge people to just focus on small parts of the data that's going to improve their processes and get that right and build from a platform on that data, and not just rush in and get as much data as you can and try and interpret it and think it's going to fix everything, because it doesn't.
I think that's what adds the additional layer of complexity, because now you're working with technicians who are specialists in electronics or in mechanics or mechatronics, and then suddenly they have to be able to synthesize this data set and pull inference from it. And that's kind of going into the realm of data analytics and data engineering, and that's a whole other skill set in and of itself. And one of the things we've been seeing quite regularly is kind of, how do you then choose what tools to use to analyze that data? Because you could be building a dashboard on Power BI, or you could be building it on SQL, but suddenly you have to start thinking about what is it you want to get at from the endpoint. Do you then have to start using, I say algorithms as if they're a black box, it's more nuanced than that, but do you have to start using tools to be able to synthesize that data for you? And I do wonder if that sometimes becomes the main challenge for companies who get through the automation and the measurement process and collecting it all, and then kind of get to the point where it feels a bit overwhelming. And if so, like, how do you work with them to overcome that?
It's funny that when they've done the automation part, I think more that we find with our customers is that they're excited to step that step level, to visually see everything, build something out into Tableau or Power BI, to really start visually seeing it, and then having a meeting every week to track it on there. What we often find, though, is actually the point of trying to get it into that point. It's not the challenge of whether they start. They normally have a visual of where they want to go, at least at first. It's actually having someone internally or the resources to have that data engineer, that data analysis, which is often a problem. We can now and again step in and help with that resource, but internally in the company as well, having those people, again, with we kind of mentioned labor shortage at the start, but again, that IT skills as well as a labor shortage there as well, to make sure someone can actually build that out in the first place. To have the starting block of that foundation can be difficult, especially in a lot of companies we work with.
You find, Damon, that sometimes companies, there's a sense of realization in there that they have to believe what the data is telling them. Sometimes if you're asking for the data and it tells you, you might not like what it's telling you, but the data, the data is raw. You've just got to put it into context and interpret it and apply how you're going to go and use that data. But be prepared to accept what it's telling you.
Yeah, 100%.
I think one of the things here as well is about a shift in mindset. So previously we had quite a fixed mindset, and I think mentioned in the company notes to this call was, it's about agility now, and actually that's what technology is enabling. So, one thing we advocate for is learning by doing. So, yes, you've got more data and you learn things from it, but it's having that mindset to continually improve. And I think that from the outset, and teaching that mindset is really important.
And it's not just mindset, it's company change as well, culture change as well, and kind of coming from leadership. Because if you've got those really keen people in the organization wanting to automate their processes and build out that data and kind of try to understand their processes better, that's never going to happen unless the budget holder and the senior decision makers are on board and are able to say, we're giving you the time and the capacity to do that. And it can sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's more straightforward than before, but it seems sometimes that can be building the case for business can be the first hurdle more than anything else.
Yeah, for sure. We can find actually sometimes when I talk to people that the leadership often ask for this data, then have to sit there for a week and wait for people to put it together in an Excel and send it to them. So hopefully that becomes more and more recognizable that actually I need to invest to fix that problem. You see me nodding along. I'm assuming you've seen the same, everyone.
I think everyone has data collection problems, don't they? And knowing what to do with it. Sorry, Florian, I interrupted.
Yeah, no, I was gonna ask actually another part to it, and it'd be interesting to hear what you guys think is how you then reintegrate these new methods into existing processes, because it's all right to have that dashboard and to have this data and to start being able to pull out understanding from it, but then how do you reintegrate that back into your MERP processes and into your kind of wider infrastructure within the organization? Yeah, that was the question.
We'd like to pick up Florian's point there.
Or can you reintegrate it? Do you
Sure,
have to raise it to the ground and start from scratch?
Yeah, it's interesting. I was smiling because, it just make you think, because I think we mentioned it earlier that sometimes your business process have to change to accommodate the fact that it's an automated data set coming your way now, and as Damon says, that in itself, tying a resource up for data for a week to get a week's worth of data, which is actually then a week out of date. It's not instant. In this world today, everything needs to be instant, and the beauty of manufacturing, if you get instant data, you can make an instant response to it. But it is that business process about how you respond to that data and what it's telling you.
Yeah, absolutely.
I know particular examples of manufacturing customers I work with, they changed it where at the start of every week they're sat there in meetings going around the data, focusing on actions that have come up that haven't been completed, all of that different stuff, and it's updated from the week before. So they're instantly, week by week, able to see a trend that's going down, solve that before it becomes a proper issue, or vice versa. So it seems to be just that simplicity. I think they're actually, it's just putting some time in for a meeting for everyone to gather around who's in leadership, just to go, how are we doing on a week by week basis? And if there's a problem, we need to go resolve that. I don't know, I might be oversimplifying it, to be fair, but that's what I've seen from a couple of my customers.
No, I think that makes absolute sense. Like you say, it's a cultural, a lot of, like any change really, it's all to do with culture. If I can just steer us quickly away from data, we've talked about the importance of data and understanding all that, and onto something actually. The MTC a couple of weeks ago published a report, and I'm going to try and share my screen to show you some of the findings of that report. Hopefully you can all see that, about the barriers to adoption for automation. And there's a couple of quite telling statistics in that, and a couple of things actually that we haven't really touched on yet. Most notably, I suppose, cost. That's something that kind of jumps out. Obviously, it's the biggest answer on there. This is from March 2020, apparently. So the data is pre-pandemic. So it'd be interesting to see if that's changed at all now. But it'd be interesting, I suppose, if we start with cost. A lot of manufacturers clearly think, automation technology is going to be expensive. And Kevin, I know you work with SMEs who maybe don't have the massive budgets. I'm sure Damon and Steve and Florian, you all work with SMEs who don't have massive budgets for automation. What would be your advice, I suppose, for companies like that who think, oh, I can't possibly, automate, or I can't possibly implement technology, because especially at the moment, times are hard, and I just don't have the cash flow. I guess it's taking a kind of longer term approach, and some of the things that we've spoken about around kind of long term benefits to the business, as opposed to looking at it as an upfront cost. But I'd be interested to hear what you guys have to say.
The first thing I'd advise, not being blowing our own trumpet, but is come and speak to us, because that's kind of what we're set up to do, address a lot of those barriers to adoption that are listed there. I mean, lack of government support, that's what we are. Concerns over cost, we offer grant funding, match grant funding up to 50% of the total project cost. So, yes, we're trying to address some of these concerns through programs like Made Smarter. And I know, Steve, there's loads of great stuff that you do at the MTC as well, which is in a similar vein. Yeah,
very much so. I mean, this report, robotics and automation, was written by a chief technology robotics engineer, Mike Wilson, and a lot of the data, he comes from a very established background, not least as a member of BARA, so he's best placed to understand a lot of the barriers to adoption and cost. Constantly hear about the cost. Some companies are very hindered in their payback period and how quickly they can release that capital funding. But perhaps we have to be a little bit more creative on cost. Certainly for SMEs, forming of cooperatives, for example, between small companies who can help share the burden of R&D, that can tap into, as Kevin said, Made Smarter and the MTC, where the expertise is, that can put you in contact with the right people. And that is a real opportunity to get around one of those barriers around those concerns of cost, in terms of down selecting, putting you in contact with the right suppliers and the right integrators who can look at that and design a system that is capable of achieving what you want to achieve, and obviously looking at your payback period as well that you have.
Absolutely. Damon, is there anything you'd say, obviously as a technology provider, and you'd say to people concerned about their costs?
So in terms of concern about cost, I guess the first thing I would say is I wouldn't hope that would stop them from going out there and just asking the question, having conversations with technology providers, because there are so many that can help different aspects within businesses, as well as different parts of the manufacturing side, that it's worth going out there just to purely have that conversation, which is free, and getting an idea of exactly of that cost, because the technology is unique in such a sense that actually it's getting cheaper and cheaper by the years, the months anyway. I know I just look at my phone, in reality, was £1,000 when the first iPhone came out, and I've still got a £1,000 phone. But the reality of what it can do now is it comes with a 2-megapixel camera, but it now comes with 3 cameras that can take picture quality far greater. It comes with better screen, more power, better battery life. I could pay off my wallet, run all these kind of stuff on there, just from the same amount of money that was 10 years ago. On the original iPhone, I wasn't allowed to change the background of my phone. With that, so it's like we talk about it. It's one of those topics that always talked about, how technology is getting cheaper and cheaper, and that 100% is the case. So I would definitely be, if that concern of cost was there a couple of years ago for that person, I think just go out there and just ask and see if it's changing. I know our sensor cost over 3 years has plummeted, and how much we charge per sensor, because we moved to a different provider that does it a hell of a lot cheaper, because everyone is competing, everyone is going cheaper and cheaper in that technology as we could do more and more capabilities with it. So it's one of those which I hope that concern of cost goes away. I don't expect it will do, with inflation recently, obviously, kind of taking margins less and less for companies and for manufacturing itself. But just go out there, have a conversation. I think you'll find it's probably surprisingly cheaper than you're thinking.
Absolutely, yeah. Steve, sorry, were you about to?
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was just thinking about Damon's analogy there, and it's a good analogy, because I think of my phone. I don't think mine's probably as good as yours. I've only got an iPhone 8, Damon. So, but but I think the functionality that phone affords, really, do I really use all of that functionality? And I'll probably bet you I only use about 30 to 40% of the functionality of my iPhone. And that in itself, you know, do I need an iPhone when an old handset who remembers the old big Motorola ones would suffice? And that I guess is one concern over cost. But that's not to unpick your analogy. I think it's a good analogy in terms of the reduction in cost. But I think that has to be tempered with what is actually do I need to invest in to actually fulfill that hole that I've got, that objective that I need to complete. Is it an iPhone or is it an old dial-up phone from the 70s? Who knows?
Yeah,
they seem to be making a comeback.
To carry on the analogy, I think it's quite an interesting one. The other thing with Apple is, of course, it locks you into that one system. And like Android, for example, when you're locked in, and actually that's an issue we see, barrier to adoption we see with lots of manufacturers, because they're kind of locked into one system that can't be integrated with other systems. And that kind of ties in with the other barrier you noted up there, the misplaced pride in legacy technology. And this idea, I think it's loss aversion, where you're more inclined to avoid the perceived loss of all that investment you've made. You're more inclined to avoid that than you are about making a decision to change or to do something new. So it's something I think we need to address and help manufacturers to get over. So yeah, interesting analogy, Damon. I'm going to use that when I...
You make an excellent point now, I have to say, Kevin, is around being locked into one system. And yeah, I've come across, when we've come across customers that have old software like that have that problem. So for anyone who's looking for software, it's an absolute must that they have APIs or any sort of integration that's available on there. It is seemingly now seems to be more of a standard with newer software. For sure, that has to do it. Just simply because you'll be able to achieve so much more with the suite that you end up having. And it's so important.
I think it's also that it doesn't have to be complex, the automation. I've seen really effective savings being made with a couple of sensors and a few lines of Python code. Like it can be relatively straightforward if cost is a serious barrier. And I think picking up on the lack of clarity on benefits, it's becoming more and more clear that the businesses who are agile and able to adapt and able to streamline their processes and better understand where their losses are the ones who are going to be able to compete in this market that's becoming more and more competitive. I think, like with energy pricing, for example, it's becoming more and more difficult to run high intensive and high consuming processes. And actually, if you're that person who can make your margins wider by using automation and technology to use less energy and become more resource efficient, you're building out a competitive advantage that has a long-term effect. And actually, the clarity around benefits is really, businesses that don't adapt probably, and I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but probably won't be around for much longer if they're not able to keep up the pace. And actually, that is the benefit, the long-term sort of stability of your organization and where they will stay and where they'll be placed in the market in a couple of years' time.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point, Florian, and not actually something we've really touched on so far. It is especially at the moment, like you say, it's a very competitive market, and any advantage you can get over your competitors, whether that's, like you say, being more energy efficient and saving money on energy costs, or kind of automation and some of the benefits we've talked about so far today. I think that's certainly something that manufacturers need to realise. Has anybody else got anything to say? I'd like to pick Florian's brain, and I suppose Kevin and everyone, about the government support. But has anybody else got anything pressing they'd like to say about anything else on there before I quickly ask Florian? Obviously, you work with government quite closely. 12% of the people there seem to think that there's no government support out there. What is, what through the work you do, what are MPs doing, what's government doing, and how can manufacturers tap into that? And I'm sure Kevin will come to you in a second, because you're a kind of case in point, really.
Yeah, I think what we're hearing a lot from industry is that there are loads of advisory services, but not necessarily clarity over where you go and who you approach for different topics. So one of the things we've been saying is kind of, how can we streamline that? So if you're an SME with a particular need, you understand that you can go to the catapults for this particular need, you can go to MTC and Made Smarter for others. And And that kind of cuts out a lot of the bureaucracy that you end up seeing. Kevin's already touched upon this, but I think grants for innovation funding and innovation adoption is really key. It's how you get those who don't have the massive infrastructure of the big OEMs to be able to adopt technology and kind of have that initial capital cost subsidized and funded by government. One of the things we're also asking for is a bit more of a focus around manufacturing, because we talk about industry as a whole, but really the core part of it is manufacturing. Maybe that's me being biased. And obviously we had the industrial strategy, and now we're looking at net zero strategy, innovation strategy. And these are all papers where government are making really clear commitments to a digitalized and net zero future. And the argument is that actually you need to make sure that the manufacturing sector within the UK is being reshored appropriately, that we can make our own materials and resources here rather than offshoring it elsewhere and using our purchasing power elsewhere. So in terms of government support, we're seeing that government are starting to listen. I think around the energy pricing, that's an example of kind of where immediate assistance is being handed out, and we're starting to see those conversations between industry and government working. And what we're looking to see in the future is more discussion around skills, because that comes up all the time. We talk about labour market failure and kind of what the future of the manufacturing workforce is going to look like. And often you see a bit of dissonance between what DWP, Department for Work and Pensions, Department for Education and BASE are doing, the business departments are doing, and actually they should probably be working together to understand how is curriculum in colleges, higher education institutes feeding into industry, how are apprenticeships and the future T-levels going to meet that demand. There's still concerns about T-levels and what that might mean for industry. And so we want to see that open discussion happening and kind of thoughts around, well, these people who are entering the workforce, where are they going to end up long term? Like what's their career trajectory going to look like? And actually, how do you also provide businesses with the support to be able to upskill and reskill the current workforce that they have? Because that's quite important. We say the majority of the 2030 workforce are already in work. So yes, it's about incoming people, but it's also about the technicians and engineers who are really talented, who just need, that top up in a particular area of skills or training. And that again can be quite difficult for SMEs in particular to navigate. So that we're kind of calling on policymakers to clarify that landscape, really work hand in hand with industry, listening to organizations like the MTC, like Safety Culture, like Made Smarter, to understand like what is it that industry need. And that's kind of, it's looking quite promising, but there's still a lot of work to be done. And it's good to see the sort of bottom up and top down approach. So government and helping with their strategies and looking to deliver that in the next couple of years. But you've also got these industry advisory boards and panels who are also feeding in. And I think that's quite key.
Thanks, Florian. That was really interesting. Kevin, obviously, if you could, talk about from a Made Smarter perspective, and then we'll move on from all this for a bit and begin to wrap up.
Yeah, I mean, I can't really add to what Florian said there. It's a comprehensive overview of what the government are doing. Just on the point of there being lots of support services out there, and that's one of the things SMEs are saying is, where do we go? Where do we start? It's quite a confusing landscape. I mean, one of the reasons for the original conception of Made Smarter was to be that go-to kind of brand for support. And that's not to say we work completely in isolation. We work quite closely in collaboration with organisations like the MTC, like the MRC in Sheffield, and the new one in Lancashire. We can help signpost out to those other support agencies as well, which do more some more of the technical kind of development work that we can't do on the program. So I think it's very much about joining up the dots. I think the support landscape's there. It's just joining it all up for manufacturers.
Thanks, Kevin. I'll just stop sharing. There we go. So obviously we've covered quite a bit here. I'm conscious of time and everything, and just to kind of summarize, really, just to kind of start wrapping up, I'd kind of like everyone to kind of share their thoughts about what happens next. Obviously we're in a post-pandemic, post-Brexit world. There's all sorts of challenges that we wouldn't have thought would be a thing a few short years ago. Certainly a pandemic, no one saw that coming, and the impact that's had. I'd be interested to see how you think manufacturing is already adapting and is going to change even more in the kind of months and years to come, especially when it comes to technology. It's a slightly wishy-washy question, but hopefully we can put something with that. Steve, if I come to you first, and then we'll go from there.
Well, I think the sector is really buoyant at the moment. I think more buoyant than I've seen it for a long time. Massive opportunities out there, and in a nutshell, really, if there is anybody out there who is toying with the idea of automation, technology, and they don't know where to start, please give the likes of Kevin, myself at the MTC a call. Just even if it's just a speculative call and a reach out, somebody will be there to point me in the right direction.
Brilliant, thanks, Kevin. I'll come to you next.
Yeah, I think we know that the sort of the direction we're going in. I've always looked, Industry 4 is really a vision for the future. It's not where we are now by a long means, and I think there's a lot of work we need to do to get there, to realise that vision. We need to get the foundations right, the data and systems in place to enable that transformation. Yes, I think where are we going next? We're heading in the right direction. We have a vision, but there's a lot of work to do to get there.
Interesting times ahead, I'm sure. Florian, I'll come to you, and then Damon, I'll get you to kind of wrap up.
Cool.
Yeah, I think there's a lot happening in this space, and I echo Steve. Manufacturing is really coming to the fore, and I think as we go forward, and there'll be continuous disruption, as much as we don't want to think about that. It's a key strategic sector, and kind of the good work speaks for itself. What I'd love to see is more examples of best practice and case studies where businesses are really achieving their net zero and digitization ambitions, because that's kind of how we then build the case for business in terms of better government funding and turning our attention to how we build a stronger manufacturing sector. And I personally put a lot of confidence into this industry, because I think that's how we're going to achieve particularly our sustainability goals. And yeah, I think the final point is, if you are in a local constituency and operating in a local area, reach out to your MP, let them know about the good stuff that you're doing, because that's always good for them to have that evidence.
Great, yeah, thanks. Good advice that. Thank you, Damon. Yeah, if you'd just like to kind of answer the question, but also talk about how safety culture can help any manufacturers who've been watching this who might have, some concerns or some extra questions, I suppose.
Yeah, 100%. I think manufacturing, is an extremely exciting time with kind of the pandemic and stuff. I guess we've kind of realized potentially we can't rely on all the time on other countries to be able to do it for the first time. So we need to step up and do kind of, I guess, probably more with the less that we have now, and as we grow on that as well. So it's incredibly exciting. I've been able to just get into it really over the past 3 to 4 years, and I've been enjoying watching it, enjoying really learning about it around this side. So it's been great talking to you all here. If there is anyone that's interested who wants to reach out to kind of us as Safety Culture, I'm more than happy to chat. There's kind of 2 main parts, I guess. What we do is, one is helping automate inspections, safety inspections, quality, warehouse, all of those kind of stuff that people do in paper inspections. We automate it, so again, you can do it on the phone, have that data go straight to you. You have it in a structured way that would show you exactly where your problems are, so you can address them and improve in the future. And then also we spoke a lot about the labor shortage and the labor issue, and then also topping up people's engineering knowledge and stuff like that. And how do you get out to everyone? Now you can't have everyone in the classroom at the same time. People potentially, both on a pandemic issue but on a personal issue, I think people prefer to learn from home, learn wherever they can. So we also have another side to that called EdApp, where you can just have training sent to every single person. They can do it on the phone, wherever they are, have that. And again, all that data fed to you in a structured way to show you how all your team are training. So those are the 2 main things we do.
Brilliant, thanks, Damon. Yeah, we'll be putting some contact details up for Safety Culture towards the end of the video. But if anybody watching wants to get in contact with any of the panelists, please do reach out, and we're more than happy to help connect you with the relevant people. But for now, thank you very much to the panel. Thank you to everybody for watching. Thanks, Steve, Kevin, Florian, and of course Damon and Safety Culture for sponsoring the video. We hope everyone watching it has enjoyed it. I hope you've all learned something and feel slightly more confident before starting out on your automation journey, wherever you are on that journey. I look forward to seeing you on the next Manufacturing Management Live panel, and thank you all very much. Thank you.
Great, thanks.